Good morning. Washington's new tariffs on Brazil are scrambling the world's coffee markets, and China is going to benefit more than anybody. For coffee, both China and the United States are almost completely dependent on imports to meet demand. In the US, the domestic coffee growing industry is tiny, and all of it comes from Hawaii. Hawaiian coffee production during the 23-24 harvest season was 11.5 million pounds, and that is falling over time. In China, almost all the production of coffee comes from here in Yunnan province. For last year, Yunnan produced 140,000 tons of coffee, which is 98% of China's overall production. 140,000 tons works out to over 300 million pounds of coffee, which is nearly 30 times what the Hawaiians grow, but it's still nowhere close to meeting China's demand for coffee, which is one of the fastest growing coffee markets in the world. The newest tariffs on Brazil are blowing up things in the US. American coffee buyers are avoiding new buys of Brazilian coffee because of the tariffs. But on the other hand, many of them are stuck because the coffee blends, which are the most popular sellers, are dependent on Brazilian beans. Companies are avoiding new contracts for now to avoid paying the higher tariffs. That sentence right there should answer conclusively who pays the tariffs. It's not the Brazilian coffee plantations. So some buyers are asking to lock in prices now, but take delivery later, hoping the tariffs go away. But suppliers aren't willing to do that in case prices continue to rise. A third of the coffee in the United States market comes from Brazil. In April, Brazil was hit with a 10% tariff. Then on 6 August, it went to 50%. Even 10% was hurting coffee businesses in the United States, but now it's impossible to make the math work. Zaza Coffee in Florida has a few months of supply of beans, then we'll look for alternative suppliers from other countries. At the new 50% tariffs, they can't afford to buy from Brazil. Ritual Coffee is out of San Francisco. The 10% tariff was nearly impossible. 50% is insurmountable. So nobody is buying from Brazil for the US market unless they can easily pass along higher costs. But Brazil still has a lot of coffee to sell. And so Europe is likely to benefit some. The biggest beneficiary is likely to be China, however, which leaves coffee consumers in the United States just paying a lot more for the coffee that does come in. The reason for that is that Brazil is just too big. We simply cannot take Brazil's supply out of the US market without causing price spikes from everywhere else that's coming in. Vietnam produces Robusta blends, which is of lower quality and cost compared to Brazilians, and so importers may look that way because the tariffs out of Vietnam are also lower. Honduran coffee prices are already shooting higher, and Colombian producers have withdrawn from the futures market. When importers buy on the futures markets, they lock in a price, and the Colombians don't want to lock in a price today when the prices may be going a lot higher. So US roasters are waiting, hoping that Trump changes his mind again and things go back to normal. If that does happen, it's got to happen in a hurry because Chinese buyers are already looking to lock in supplies from Brazil. China is one of the fastest growing markets in the world. They already have very strong relationships with Brazil, and Chinese coffee buyers are taking advantage of the problems with the United States. China authorized 183 new Brazilian coffee producers to export to China under a 5-year permit. Once those orders start flowing to China, especially if it's under a 5-year supply contract at fixed prices, that's going to be a big problem for US roasters. This report has the numbers. Most American roasters are dependent on beans from Brazil. And the American market is huge, and it's an important market for Brazil. But China's market is growing a lot faster than the American market, up 2.5 times in 10 years. China has more coffee shops than any other country. And this is another feature of the Chinese economy. Demand for coffee here has exploded higher, but supply is rising even faster, so the prices are going down. They repeat that China's domestic coffee industry is growing, but not nearly fast enough to keep up. So China is buying coffee from anyone who grows it, and that includes countries in Africa. Most countries in Africa sell to China with zero tariffs. So that means that coffee producers from Ethiopia, Uganda, and Rwanda have found big new markets here. But Brazil is the 800-pound gorilla here in China, just like in the United States. 32% of China's coffee imports come from Brazil, which is the same as the United States. To suppliers in Brazil, they need to be in China anyway. Coffee demand in mainland China is growing by 15% per year, compared to a global average of 2.2. Chinese brands are also growing much faster than Western brands here. They've been far more successful in localizing their coffee offerings compared to Starbucks and Tim Hortons, for example, who tend to offer the same menu and blends to all their stores across the world. This is a case study of how the trade wars and high tariffs are ricocheting and blowing up American industries and businesses while benefiting industries and businesses everywhere else. Coffee prices are going higher for all of it coming into the United States market, no matter where it's from. But that also means less supply because American roasters cannot pass along these higher prices. We might have thought that Brazil would be desperate to make a deal so they could keep the US market. But as soon as the new tariffs went on, the phones in Brazil started ringing, and Chinese buyers are asking their new best friends in Brazil if someone could please pick them up at the airport. I work in supply chains, and I get emails all the time from companies around the world asking how they can get on these approved lists to sell their agricultural or energy products in China. And I say the same thing every time. It takes forever. The audits that the Chinese want are going to drive you crazy. So don't expect anything fast or cheap. But here, someone in Beijing made it happen in one single day for 183 coffee companies in Brazil. Once those trade flows kick in, with all that Brazilian coffee heading to China instead of the United States, we're not getting it back. This is Dali, Erhai Lake. Be good. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power